That beautiful brown wooden bass in your hand.
My 6 string bass, yeah.
Gorgeous,
Yeah.
gorgeous
Yeah,
bass.
yeah, it's strung like a guitar, so I can actually use, guitar, the cage system basically, which is it's tuned different than a 6 string bass guitar would, because this would be a B and this would be a C. But so this is just like a regular guitar tuning.
Since we're talking bass, man, one of the
Mhm.
things I always love about you, I played drums as a kid, but I always
Oh.
fascinated with the bass. And one day I plan to pick up the bass. I love that you always play fingers, and I feel like it's kind of a lost art form. So many people play with a pick nowadays.
Well, let me show you my box of picks.
So
Yeah, I mean, because on stage I like to have that connection.
oh
There's a
wow.
box of picks in there, so it's a, and I have my own signature picks too, but not on stage. I mean, I did do one whole tour with Whitesnake in 1994, and I said, you know what, I'm gonna play with a pick. Why not?
How'd it
So I
go?
did. I got out of my system.
I was gonna ask, is there any like hidden track that is recorded with a pick that we wouldn't expect it to be from you?
Hidden track.
Well, not
Oh,
hidden track, but like an album track.
just about everything that I play nowadays, I do it with a pick, because there's in the last 30 years, the guitar tones have become so aggressive
Mm.
that we need to cut through. I mean, I grew up playing James Jamerson inspired bass lines. I mean, I was never able to have his finesse, but those tracks were cut with like very thin sounding guitars, just like rhythm, chunky,
Yeah.
not these wall of Marshalls like we have nowadays. And then you add all of these pedals and then detuned, or sometimes to C, detuning and C tuning. So it's like, wow, so anytime that I have to use any of those tunings, I gravitate towards a pick just to get some
Cut through.
definition where the downbeat is. So,
Beautiful,
yeah.
man. Well, one day I'll have much more bass to talk with you once I start actually playing. But let's get into the show. Really cool that you guys are coming out to the Inland Empire, coming out to Highland, California, Rock N Brews inside Yaamava Resort and Casino, and even cooler that you've teamed up with the band Autograph. They're going to be joining you on this show.
Yeah, it's gonna be great. What was really interesting is that even the Quiet Riot, I mean, I go back to 1978 when I first joined the band. We never really went outside of the LA County.
Hmm.
We might have done some shows close to Orange County,
Sure.
you know, down there a little bit, like where they had this thing called the Golden Ballroom down there. But as far it was mostly LA, because in order to get out of the area, you have to be a national recording artist.
Sure.
And even though the band had 2 records in Japan, it meant nothing locally. We were just, we might as well have a record deal on the moon. It doesn't mean anything. But so it wasn't until later on, and the closest to Yaamava that we ever played, at least when I was still in the band, uh, was the US Festival.
Oh yes, of course, of course. I
We
mean,
finally get out of LA County on that one. Yeah.
you played to a billion people, or however many people were there that day.
And a half, yeah, 1.5 million, yeah.
Were you able to see anything, or did it really just look like ants?
Well, look, by the time that I did the US Festival, I had just been on tour with Ozzy, so I was used to, playing for more than 50 people,
Right.
So what happens is that when you're playing for 350,000, it's like, according to your vision, like now I have LASIK, but back then I was much younger. That was 40 years ago. So my vision was pretty decent. But even with that, it's a blur. And but I could see the porta potties to my right. And if you're thinking what is going through his mind while he's playing in front of 350,000 people, was my concern. What about if everybody decides to go to the bathroom at the same time?
Way more people than porta potties at that point.
That's right. So you start doing the math. Okay, it's 350,000 versus 100 porta potties, and you start, yeah, as you're playing, you're doing that. That's what goes on.
That's the calculations in your brain, not the next note or song. It's who's going to go to the bath, who's going to be not able to go to the bathroom.
That's right.
Dude, that's so funny. As far as the set list for you guys, imagine it's pretty much to the mental health condition critical albums. But do you guys spike in some other things? Is set list pretty much set, or do you play around with it?
Well, we actually on our headlining set list includes a song that we released about a year ago. There was the it was a lost track with Kevin DuBrow vocals, and of course Alex Grossi wrote it with Kevin, our guitar player Alex. He's
Yeah.
been in the band for over 20 years now. And so what happened is we have Frankie playing on it, Frankie Benali, and I added my bass track, and that was released about a year ago, and that's called "Can't Hold On." I can't hold on, and there's a video of it on YouTube, which basically chronicles Frankie's fight with pancreatic cancer.
Yeah.
And how it affected all of us. His wife Regina directed the video, and she shot it, and I'm in it. As a matter of fact, there's a moment capture that she captured when he asked me to come over and told me the news,
Yeah.
and she captured that moment. So it's hard for me to watch, but then again, it's a beautiful reminder of a almost 50-year-old friendship that we had. We started playing in 1972 together, Frankie and I, in Florida.
Yeah,
So
that's one of the things I was going to ask you about the difference between, playing with Frankie and playing with your drummer now, who's a beast in his own right, Johnny Kelly. I mean, both New Yorkers, but did they play the same, or I know Frankie used to always have massive kits and Johnny's a little bit more compact, but tell me about the difference in playing with those drummers, those two.
it's funny because I we talk about dates, like like this happened in 1983, 84, and Johnny will go, I was 9 years old. But actually, what it's saying is that he's told us, like the first record he ever bought and played to was actually the Mental Health record as a drummer, and Frankie picked him to be his successor. Yeah, handpicked him. Frankie handpicked Johnny Jizzy Pearl, from Love Hate, our singer, and Kevin handpicked Alex and groomed him in everything Quiet Riot.
Yeah,
So,
Alex has been there.
but yeah, he's been there for a while. Yeah, so by the time I rejoined the group, everybody was very much settled in, and what can I say? Johnny, he played with one of my favorite modern bands, Typo Negative.
Oh yeah.
I'll never forget the day that Kevin brought the CD on the bus and said, "Check this out," and we listened to it and go, "Wow, this is really cool." Yeah, yeah, yeah. Peter Steele always reminded me of if Lestat, the vampire, was in a rock band. That's what he would sound like.
Totally, totally. I even look what Johnny's doing now with his new band, I Am.
Yeah, I mean, we support each other. Because Jay-Z also does some shows as Love Hate, his own version of it, and we support him, Yeah, definitely.
Do you have anything cooking outside the band or just Quiet Riot 100%?
No, just quite right. I'm home, and I've been here since 1978, and on and off. I mean, the band ceased to exist when Randy left to join Ozzy, and then it became Dubrow. And I used to play with Kevin in Dubrow, and I lived with him up until the day that I left to join Ozzy,
Right.
thanks to Randy's recommendation. And then I came back after Randy passed away. I needed to be back with my Quiet Riot consciousness. It was very interesting, and I can say this pretty much for about all the bands that I knew that came out of the Sunset Strip at that time. Is that the music is the only thing that mattered. It was all about the music. And so there was a lot of musical integrity going on. Everybody really, really trying to outdo everybody with the quality of our performances and the music that we were creating.
You know, I was of course going to bring up Randy. He's sadly buried a few miles from where you're going to be playing in Highland, California, and wanted to learn a little bit more. Obviously, we all know about his playing and hear his brilliance, but I wanted to learn a little bit about Randy the man. Was he uh, a funny guy? Was he sarcastic? Did he have any hobbies outside of guitar? Did he just have a guitar in his hand 24/7? But talk about Randy, because Randy Rhodes is the man.
Yeah. How much time do we have? Because I actually wrote a book about it. It says Off the Rails. That's the name of the
Right.
book. And well, if I can put it in a nutshell, and it's a pretty big nutshell. Randy was the only musician I've ever worked with so far that comes from a academic music academia family. His mom and dad, music professors. They opened up a music school called Musonia, which is still out there in North Hollywood. So Randy was, that's all he knew, music. So he started playing classical guitar when he was 5, 6 years old. And then by the time he became a teenager, he wanted to hang out with kids his age, go to parties and not be that guy in the corner playing the classical guitar. He wanted to rock. So that's when he started picking up the electric guitar. And then he put together Quiet Riot just because he needed to have a band. And uh, his childhood friend Kelly Garney became the bass player. He taught Kelly how to play bass, and then they found Kevin Dubrow, and then they got Drew Forsythe, and then I joined the band in 1978. I got to tell you, yeah, ever since I met Randy and I play with him in both in Quiet Riot and Ozzy Osbourne, it's his musical integrity that has been the biggest example. And Randy was one of those musicians that led by example. If you weren't, we never told each other what to do in Quiet Riot. It was, we respected each other, what we brought to the table, that piece of the puzzle that we brought every time we wrote music and created something new or a performance or whatever. It was, it was we were all very supportive of our creative freedom that we had.
It's funny in trying to remember old friends. I had a friend that passed away recently, and one of the things that I find interesting to talk about old friends that we've lost is, was there any particular band or artist that Randy turned you on to, or vice versa? Was there something that he was super into that you never understood? That you're like, I just don't get it, man.
Well, I mean, I have to respect all of that because, uh, since he was so musical, he was so musically advanced. I knew that he could hear things are either theoretically, with music theory or harmony composition that I couldn't even understand. But I would say one of them would be Bebop Deluxe.
Hmm.
Bill Nelson. He loved Bill Nelson, and of course, they were. Then we're talking about the other guitar players were guitar players that we had in common. Leslie West. I just did a Music Cares event for celebrating Leslie West last night.
Right.
And I was so proud to have been asked to do that, especially because Randy was such a big fan of Leslie. And of course, Johnny Winters, another great inspiration for him. Just basically the same guitar heroes that we had in the 70s. We share that. Yeah.
And speaking of Quiet Riot, just to put a button on it, are you thinking about new music with the band, or just kind of gonna leave
We're
the
always
music
thinking
career?
about new music, but here's the conundrum. Uh, there's certain songs that the fans expect
Sure.
to hear, and we throw in, we want to celebrate the legacy of our members. So during a headline set, we throw in the Blackout in the Red Room from Love Hate for Jizzy. We do a little bit of Black Number One from
Nice.
Typo Negative.
Right.
Just enough, to acknowledge it, and. And so, having said that, our set it's really packed with songs. I mean, and if we remove one, you're gonna get that nasty message on social media. Hey, I pay all this money because I want to hear that song.
Right.
And so so we stick to, we want to please our audience because they've been supporting us all these decades, and we want to give them what they want to hear. So to actually start pulling out songs to include new music,
Right.
it's a tough decision.
Totally understand, but figured it was worth asking. Wanted to touch upon the other band, and you had mentioned it too, Whitesnake. Wanted to dig into the album that you did, Slip of the Tongue. Interestingly enough, and just a fun little anecdote, one of my wedding songs was "The Deeper the Love" that you played on.
Deeper the Love, yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
great song.
it's not the first one you think of Whitesnake, you think, Still of the Night and all the heavy ones, but that one is my my love. That any memories of writing or recording that song?
Um, it was interesting because it was David's tip of the hat to R&B.
Hmm.
It was being as R&B that he grew up with R&B and blues. He's really a blues singer. And so it was his approach of like, okay, I'm gonna in this record. He originally he wrote "Is This Love" for Tina Turner.
Oh,
Speaking of
wow.
R&B, so
Yeah.
his ballads have become more of that sensuous R&B type of vibe to them. And so here we have the deeper the love. It's pretty much the same thing. The kind of so we have to approach it. We have to like say, okay, let's take off the heavy metal hat or hard rock blues, and let's go back to our roots of Motown.
Yeah.
Let's go back to that, which is what I did on that song. I mean, I wasn't trying to play like James Jamerson, but definitely, give it more room and let it pump and breathe a little bit, in that direction rather than more in your face type
Yeah.
of metal. Yeah.
I mean, it's certainly a brilliant album. I mean, "Fool for Your Loving," that new version, "Now You're Gone," the title
Mm,
track. And
mm,
curious too about that time because you had played with the prior lineup, toured on the '87 record, and then
mm.
Steve Vai comes in '89. Was that a big transition?
Personally, for me, it was a welcome transition. I love Vivian, but if Vivian was not going to be there, I couldn't think of a better person to come in than Steve Vai. I learned so much from him, and yeah. See, I like to learn from the people I play with. They always have something to teach me.
And speaking of that band, what the heck is up with Tommy Aldrich? I feel like he's another legend that we never hear from. He's always like
Mm,
in the shadows. Do you keep in touch with him?
yeah, uh, yeah. Whenever we run into each other, I mean, we have a lot of bandmates that you know we're we're getting a little bit more settled, and we don't go out as much.
Sure.
And we're just because we spend so much time on the road,
So when
you
you're home,
know.
you're home.
Yeah, why? Yeah, I mean, I live in Southern California, so I'll be driving to Yaamava,
Right.
but usually it's 3 o'clock lobby call and get on the plane and get to the gig.
Sure.
So it's yeah. I listen. I love everybody, and I'm in the best terms with everybody I play with. Yeah.
Last thing I got for you, Rudy. Appreciate all the time, but we're an old school radio station. We do a feature called Mandatory Metallica, which you're going to be
Whoa.
a part of. And kind of curious if
Whoa.
you've had to interacted and shared the stage with those guys over the years. Any Metallica stories?
No, not really. But Cliff, he was such a great bass player. Uh, really, I think he really influenced a whole new generation of bassists, especially coming out of the 80s. So that's a guy that stood out for me. Not
Big
because
time.
I'm a bass player, so
Sure.
so
I mean, that whole bass solo, the pulling teeth Anastasia thing that he did and
yeah,
making that bass
yeah,
all distorted and almost sounded like a
yeah.
guitar at that point.
Yeah, yeah, and I grew up being inspired by bassists like that. Let's say Geezer Butler, or
Sure.
Chris Squire, Tim Bogart, guys that went outside of the box. And then again, I grew up in Miami, so Jacko was like our local hero, Jacko
Couple of
Pastorius,
stories,
you know.
yeah.
Yeah, so it was like, yeah, I've I've been very blessed that I've had access to listen to tremendous, beautiful bass players.
Yeah, Cliff's certainly a legend and certainly took it to a whole nother level with his playing and the tapping and everything that he
Yeah.
Do you just to put a button on it? Do you have a favorite Metallica song we could play for you on Mandatory Metallica? Anything come to mind?
Yeah, Orion.
Perfect. Yeah, the
Yeah,
talking about bass. I mean that song
yeah,
is perfect and all Cliff Burton.
yeah, exactly.
We'll rock that one for you, Rudy. Beautiful, man. Thank you so much for the time. Absolute pleasure talking to you, and can't wait for the show. Hopefully, I'll see you out there.
Really looking forward to it. And you were great, by
Thank
the
you
way.
so much, man. That
Yeah,
means a lot
really
coming
enjoyed
from
it.
you. Thank you
Really
so much for
enjoyed
the
it.
time.
Yeah.
And I'll
Thank
be
you
sure
so
to
much.
share
God
everything
bless.
with you too when it airs and the links and all that as well.
Please do. Thank you.
Thanks, Rudy. Have a good one.
God bless you. You too. Bye bye.